most of you know that really the biggest losses from childhood that happen is when you experience not being able to have a secure attachment with somebody who can love you as much as they can, like Christ loves us, and miss out on that. But that loss can also really be true for each of you as you're on your adoption or foster care journeys and you feel isolated and alone. So really for tonight, my desire is just for you to be able to leave with some hope, and I'll share a lot of my story as we go through tonight, and just knowing that you're not alone. At our church, we go by teams.
We're Team Johnson.
And we got married in 2001, so that's where the 2001 comes in. And then our daughter was drafted, we say, in 06. I really got an awesome privilege when I grew up that a lot of people don't have. But I got to be exposed to children from hard places, from all kinds of different backgrounds, from a very young age. And so that was a really awesome experience. Some of you may be able to recall way back in the 80s, there was a time when news networks, they would share like a story of a child each week that needed to be adopted and run a story on that. And it was children that needed a forever family. And so that original idea started in Oklahoma City from a news director, and it was given to my father, who got to put it into action.
Good evening, I'm Jack Bowen with 10 of our Wednesdays children.
And so he was one of the ones who started it. So what started as a spotlight story in Oklahoma City as Wednesday's Child back then, once a week, really turned into a more national movement among the networks just throughout the nation and different people. So my journey of opportunity, I'll talk about lots of opportunities tonight, really began by being able to learn about and have relationships with children that were in foster care or that needed to be adopted or had been adopted, or lots of ones that had special needs, because I hadn't really experienced that until that point in time. So at your table, I'm going to let you talk about when was your first opportunity to learn about foster care or adoption. So if you can think back to when's the first time you really heard about foster care or even knew what adoption was, and if you'll tell somebody besides your spouse, somebody who may not know, find somebody who doesn't know that story and you can tell them. Okay, I'll pull you back together. Hopefully you got close. I'll show you another one. I gave you that one. Okay, so this picture is kind of faded. I am in the little red snowsuit. So Wednesday's Child trips, when we would go on these trips, they were super memorable. Obviously, I was pretty much the youngest one there, so they always stood out to me. So I remember distinctly a ski trip when I was a little older than that, and I got a camera for Christmas. It was back then, it was just, it wasn't like it is now. You know what it is. So I remember taking pictures, and I was recognizing lots of relationships. There were some teenagers, and so like romantic relationships were starting to take place. And I was young thinking, what's going on? Like watching them and trying to take pictures, everywhere I turned. So it was pretty funny back then. So one funny moment from one of the many trips that we went on was that people could call in to ask about children that they saw, that had been on the videos that they were interested in. So several families called and they inquired about adopting me. But thankfully, I was not a teenager yet, and my parents did not consider that a viable option. If it had been much later, I guarantee they might have considered it. You never know. So through my church and just my personal relationships and the relationships with all of these children that came through our home and just that I got to meet, God really began to impress upon me the importance of relationship with Him and with others. So I'm going to let you all talk about, it says, tell about a significant opportunity that impacted your view of or created a passion for foster care or adoption. So fast forward 21 years later, and this is my husband and I when we got married. So I was in the doctorate program at Southwestern as we got married. So we had this expectation, like everyone does, that a few years later as I finished, that I would rock across the stage, pregnant, and we would run off into the sunset together for our life of ministry together. And that so did not happen. So I don't know about you, but my expectations a lot of times do not match up with God's plans. And that is on a pretty consistent basis, if not daily, that it happens to me. So my husband and I, we did seek treatment for infertility initially, but in the end, we received the news Friday before Mother's Day in 2005 that it would be a miracle, basically, for us to have a pregnancy without significant medical intervention at that point. So unknown to us, our church had decided to walk through the aisles to pass out roses on Mother's Day to all of the mothers, and someone came up to hand me one. They didn't know that I wasn't a mother, and so I had to endure the heartbreak as I turned them away, Friday before Mother's Day, finding out that we would never be able to have kids. So I'm going to let you all tell and answer at your tables, what is a disappointment or heartbreak that you have experienced on your foster care or adoption journey? So with my perspective of adoption from childhood and my husband's openness, we expectantly began to pursue our adoption journey and the possibility of adoption. So we had some disappointments along the way, potential birth moms who had chosen us but who would decide to not place their child and keep their child. So what really got us through that time, at that point in time we were at a church not very far away, and there were 3 other couples that God allowed time to mesh with all 3 of us, and so all of us were struggling with infertility. All of us ended up with different answers on that road. And a really neat part of that is that there was a pastor and his wife who also were unable to have children, and they had adopted 3 children. So they led the Bible study for us each week, and that we would go through. So along with some devotions that we did and just the Bible study together, we really got to support each other. Just through seeing pregnant women everywhere that we went, and through hearing stories of teenagers and unplanned pregnancies in the midst of that. And the hardest of all is trying to rejoice with your friends when God's plan lines up with what their expectations were, but not necessarily yours. And so that was one of ours. So I want you all to answer the question, who is someone you have looked to for support on your foster care or adoption journey? So although we had expectations and plans to adopt again, God did not provide the right timing or the opportunity for another adoption. So my daughter's adoption, like many, began as an open adoption of sending pictures every few months for those first couple of years. And our main contact was with the birth grandmother, who began sending packages for birthdays and holidays. So it was like a whole other set of gifts. Of course, she loved that. So when our daughter was 2 years old, Hurricane Ike destroyed Bridge City. And that was where her birth family was from. All of them predominantly were. So my husband and I really felt a burden at that point. And we had the opportunity to reach out and help. And so we found a park that was at a halfway point between where both of us lived. And we brought some kitchen items and we ate at Chili's for lunch. So if you've read the book, I Love You Rituals, you know how important rituals can be in families. So now whenever we are with the birth family, guess where we eat? We go to Chili's. And so that's it. So that initial meeting that we had long ago, over 10 years ago, has led to many more opportunities over these 12 years of our daughter's life. And now when we meet, the gatherings regularly include, we have a birth mom, and we have a birth stepdad, a birth sister, a birth brother, a birth grandmother, a birth step grandfather, a birth great grandmother, and a cousin that all participate. So I've got some pictures of those. So that was one of the first ones at the park. She really didn't like her brother back then. She felt like he was just annoying, but she really liked her sister. So, and there's the birth mom and I. And there's some with the birth grandmother that really started the contact initially, and her birth step grandfather. And there's all the kids swimming together. They came to visit us one time. There they are dressed up together. They look exactly alike, as you can see. And there's a more recent one of the 3 kids with the mom. So that's her brother and sister. So if you think about who has your foster care or adoption journey impacted? So if you think about who has it impacted along the way, either other people that have seen you go through foster care and adoption, or that you've made a positive impact on, someone you've reached out to because of it, how has God allowed it to be a ministry for you? So I'll let you answer that question together. So we've had lots of questions from our daughter and other people, and I've had lots of answers to give through the years. The opportunity to explain how babies are made at a very early age. The opportunity to explain to kids ministry teachers that my daughter is talking about real siblings when she tells stories. The opportunity to realize my own very limited perspective. I remember in kindergarten for open house when we went up on the wall, they had all the kids' names and they were written by like how many siblings they had, how many people were in their family. And I remember going to 0 and I was like, "Where's your name?" And she's like, "Mom, I have a brother and a sister." She had placed herself, back with the brother and the sister, and my own limited mindset was like, where's your name? Where are you at? So the opportunity to explain to my daughter why she and her sibling all have different dads, and the opportunity to explain why she and her siblings all live with different people. So Kayleen's the middle child, and she's the only sibling that was placed for adoption. So her sister was raised by the birth grandmother, and then her brother has been raised by her birth mom. The opportunity to explain why her brother and sister lived in the same town, and she lived with us in Fort Worth. And the opportunity to explain that we don't know who her birth dad is. When she was little, she used to get really excited saying, I have 4 dads. She was like, I have you, meaning my husband, and I have my birth dad, who we didn't know. I have my goddad, because she had a godfather who's Haitian, and I have Jesus. so she just claimed everyone as her fathers. So most importantly, we really got the opportunity to explain how we're all adopted in Christ, which obviously is the most meaningful, and the reason why we're all here together is from that. Along with answering questions, my husband and I have had the opportunity to struggle through making decisions and seeking wisdom from others on lots of really difficult topics. So how often to visit her birth family and how much time to have with them. Whether to allow her to spend the night with them. I could just read the news headlines back then. Daughter kidnapped as adoptive parents allow her to stay the night with her birth family. And just knew I would be the laughing stock of everyone. It matched the anxiety and fear of becoming a parent by adoption. What if our adoption is a struggle and people look at us and think, well, you're the one who made the choice to adopt, So intentional conversations about differences in values, because there are lots of those, and explaining reasons why God may have given her the opportunity to be raised in our family. So Kayleen has always had a really special bond with her dad, and she wouldn't have had that had she not grown up with us. She came to know Christ personally after my husband was diagnosed with thyroid cancer and went through that, and just realizing life and God in her life. So we've been able to support and have relationships with lots of children who are adopted, and I wouldn't be with you tonight if it wasn't for her and the opportunity that we were given to be able to be her parents. So here's our final picture. That's us today. So if you have a struggle or anxiety that you brought in with you tonight, I wanted to give you all the opportunity to pray at your tables together. So Kayleen, you want to come up? Come on. She wanted to come. This is Kayleen today. Hey, sweetie. Like if I have to. This is Kayleen Faith. So yes, who came into our home in 2006. So I'm going to let you all pray at your table. So just any anxiety or struggle that you brought in with you tonight, you can pray together at your tables. And then Simply Love was very kind. And what I brought with me tonight is last year at our office, myself and then 2 other workers that I have, counselors that are with me, we created some workbooks for all of you, actually. And so I've got a set that is just for parents who are on their journey of foster care. And those workbooks are black. They're kind of a black-gray color on the front. And then there's a workbook that is for families who have been or are on an adoption journey. So it's for children who have even already been adopted, just to kind of process through. It has a lot of family activities in it, so all of it you do as a family. You can do like 1 a week. 1 activity a week is usually what we recommend. And so those are being donated tonight by Simply Love and by Carrie. So you'll want to grab one of those. They're on the table as you leave tonight. So I'll let you all pray together, and I'm wrapped up. So thank you.